Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Reckless Optimist podcast. My name is Megan. I'm a family nurse practitioner with a deep passion for mental health. On this show, we showcase guests who have shown tenacity, grit, mental strength, and who embody the word resilience. A quick disclaimer before we start. This show is not a substitute for mental diagnosis or treatment. We do recommend that if you're struggling with your own emotional well-being, you see a mental health provider. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's get into it. Our first guest today is Nisha Patel. Nisha is a counselor and a therapist. She also is a sobriety life coach, and she is a public speaker. I have known Nisha since I was in college, and she was definitely the first person I thought of that I wanted to be my guest for this podcast when I started it. You know, it's interesting. I am very big about dates, and 3 years ago to the day, so March 17th, 2022, was when I was a guest on my very first podcast. And when I did that episode, shout out to Chris Oyen at Recovery Elevator for having me on his show. It lit a fire in me, a little fire at that time, but definitely I had this passion for maybe doing this one day. Something was starting. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I really enjoyed being an advocate for sobriety, connecting with people, finding stories of hope. I enjoy being a guest, but I really, really enjoy asking the questions. I think it kind of goes back to that insatiable curiosity that I've always had. I'm so excited about this show. This is my first episode. The show will showcase different people who have shown grit, strength, perseverance throughout their life. I want it to be a show that gives people hope, and I also want it to be a bright light in a dark world. There's so much sadness and chaos out there, and I want this show to be a source of optimism for you and something to brighten your day. So a little bit about Nisha before we get started. She is passionate about helping individuals design a life they truly love. She is the founder of a company called The Niche. She's dedicated to empowering others on their journey toward healing, purpose, and fulfillment. She is 16 years sober, which is really, really cool. She works with individuals one-on-one in group settings, and as a speaker, she brings insight and practical strategies to those she serves. With compassionate and holistic approach, Nisha tailors her work to meet each person where they are. She offers not only emotional support, but evidence-based tools for lasting transformation. She works on DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, brain spotting, and beyond counseling, she's specialized as a sobriety coach for individuals at any stage in recovery. And from knowing her personally, she is really good at helping people that are struggling with relapse. She is an amazing person. In this episode, we highlight her sobriety journey, her, kind of relationship with alcohol. She was an athlete. She's the youngest of her family, a high-achieving family, and just how alcohol use disorder can look very different for every person. It doesn't have to be a DUI or something super catastrophic. Hers was she just woke up one day and realized that it was making her life worse. And her story is very interesting. She's definitely a very spiritual person. So we talk a lot about spirituality, meditation, and, the things that she's doing now, 16 years sober. She's really someone I look up to, and it's truly an honor to have her on. So here is my episode with Nisha. Enjoy. Hey, y'all. Help me welcome Nisha to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
I'm so excited. This is our very first episode of The Reckless Optimist. And what's really cool about today, if you're listening today, is this episode will be dropping on April 21st, which is my 6-year sober anniversary.
Yay!
Yay. So
exciting.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nisha. I gave a lot of thought to who I wanted my very first guest to be, and you were it. I've known you for, how many years have we known each other?
Oh my, I don't even know. 2006?
A long
before
time.
that.
20 years, I think.
Oh my, it has to be 20 plus years. I was like, no, that's not even correct. It's way before that.
Yeah, we're old, in case you didn't know.
Obviously, I gave us the wrong decade.
Me and Nisha met in college, actually, at Mercer University, and we were drinking buddies back then. Funny how we are both now sober mental health advocates now. Nisha is a counselor. She has her own private practice. She is a mental health advocate and someone I look up to very much. So we are going to get this show started. So how the show works is every guest that comes on is a guest that I have known or someone has introduced to me that has shown resilience, mental toughness, grit, and I would love to showcase their story. So we start with a quote. I live my life by quotes and metaphors. I know you do too, Nisha. So it's funny because this quote is actually very wordy, and my producer was like, do not do this quote. It's too many words, but I am absolutely obsessed with this quote. If you follow Brene Brown, you probably have heard this quote before. It's called The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. And when I'm done talking about the quote, I would love to hear your opinion on it and what it means to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here we go. It is not the critic who counts, not the one who points out how the strong man stumbled or how the doer of deeds might have not done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with sweat and dust and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who, if he wins, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that as at his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never knew victory nor defeat. Oh, it gives me chills every time. I'd love to hear your opinion on that quote.
Yeah, that just brings tears to my eyes. One of my favorite quotes. And, she takes it from Theodore Roosevelt, who talks about the man in the arena, right? And really the premise is that if people aren't in the arena with you, if they're not doing self-improvement, they are not working on themselves, then they really don't have an opinion that matters in your life. And really that hits home because a lot of life, a lot of my upbringing, I was always doing things depending on other people's opinions and what everybody else thought, right? So much so that I lost touch with myself.
Right.
And, I think when we keep seeking for answers outside of ourselves, and for maybe people that look like they're living the dream we want or the type of life we want, we get lost.
Mm-hmm.
And then we end up in the same place and lonely and hurt. And so that quote really, really resonates because I also think, and I'm sure you can relate to this. We don't look like we've fought the toughest battles in our lives, but just the way we carry ourselves, we're bubbly and just fun, and life's challenges didn't bring us down. Like it made us more optimistic and more positive, and we're really gritty and we rise to challenges. I've known you for such a long time, and I think over the past 3 years, I've gotten to know you way better than I had known you previous. But we always had that soul sister connection. And so really, I think it's a very, very powerful quote for anybody that's making life changes or decisions that are different from the environment they're in. Before you ask, your parent or your spouse about a big change, do they have the life that you want?
Mm-hmm.
And then evaluate if the opinions really matters or not.
That is some really good advice. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. That hits home for sure. When I hear this quote, I think of a few things. The first is comfort zone. You got to get out of your comfort zone. If you want to be in the arena with your face dirty, fighting the biggest battle of your life, you got to step out. Like, what's the quote? Growth and comfort can't ride the same horse. I mean, you have to literally stop being comfortable and get uncomfortable, whether that's mentally, physically. And then the other thing I think about when I hear that quote is the relationship between vulnerability and courage and how they always go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You have to be vulnerable to be courageous. You can't have one without the other. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And I think so. And I think, no matter where you are, whether it's recovery or anything that you're doing, I always tell people when you're building that foundation, when you're doing the building blocks, yes, you have to be vulnerable, but select your audience who you're going to be vulnerable with so that if you stumble and fall, it's going to be okay. It's not going to break you or make you want to give up. You keep going.
Yeah. One foot in front of the other.
One foot in front of the other.
Yeah. I think also I'm very like visual, and I'm picturing the man in the arena and the people in the audience. And I think it's really easy to sit back and criticize and judge someone. It's a lot harder to like step up to the plate, be courageous, and put yourself out there to be judged, shamed. And I think a lot of what me and you do and other people in the recovery world about speaking publicly about addiction and alcohol use disorder, like that's putting yourself in the arena very much so.
Absolutely, it is. I think it's, you get to the point where you realize, we're taught early on that like by sharing our stories, right? We keep what we have, which is staying sober. And you also help that person on day one, day two, day seven, 14, year one. So, the way I see it is I think it's selfish for me to keep it to myself. And no, I didn't decide to share it on such a large platform until this past year when I celebrated 16. For some reason, Sweet 16 was me sharing with the world. But I would always share with people if I thought that they needed to hear my story or know my story, you know,
Yeah.
and we're seeking for solutions.
I just want to make sure everyone heard that 16 years. Like, hell yeah, girl, that is amazing.
Thank
Just
you.
amazing. I mean, you're coming up on where it's almost been half of your life, you know?
Hmm. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I
That
guess it
is,
will flip one day. Yeah.
yeah, I have lots of questions about that, about being a young person in sobriety and what that
Yeah.
was like. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I would love, love, love to hear your story. And everyone, Nisha's going to share her story of strength and hope and resilience. So when you're ready, just take us back.
Yes. So let's see. First, we'll just go back. I was born in Macon, Georgia. My parents were one of the first Indian families to settle in there. My siblings and I were the only Indian kids in our private school back in Macon, and it was hard. It was different, I would say, and I think that's like the first adversity, right? When you look different than other people, you live in a different place. Um, but I always found my spot. I will say, so did my siblings. We always found our spots, which was good in school, whether it be through education or through athleticism. And for me, I was an athlete. And so once I realized that, oh, I could get on the soccer field and we're all equal, like there is no, you know, I think like children of people that are board members and things of that nature, like that mattered. Like that did not matter. We all had one goal in mind, which was to win. I loved it. I loved the energy around teamwork. I love the competitiveness. And then I also had a really busy brain. And so it would calm my entire nervous system down. Back then, I didn't realize what was happening, but now, obviously, with education, we know a lot more, but it makes sense why I liked it. And I would spend 3, 4 hours outside a day.
Yeah. Were
Yeah.
you ever officially diagnosed as a child with ADHD or inattentiveness or any type of disorder when you were younger?
So when I was younger, I was not. My parents, it was suggested that I get tested. And they were like, no, she's fine. Her siblings did great in school. And culturally, like learning disabilities, all that was just like unheard of. They're like, she'll figure it out. So it wasn't actually until I was an adult that I got diagnosed with ADHD, about 2 years ago. And it blew my mind. I mean, I kind of knew, and I always talked about, oh my God, I have a busy brain and a busy body. And I knew what it was, but I got to the point where I was like, no, I want to know, like, I really want to make sure this is what it is so that I can properly manage it.
Yeah, there's a lot of research about alcohol use disorder and ADHD and how they can kind of parallel and correlate. So that's interesting, that you were diagnosed later in life, even though you probably had it when you were younger. But there's a lot
Oh
more
my.
talk about it now, versus 20, 30 years ago.
One, if you, and right. And I think given that, like, obviously my environment wasn't going to be like, yeah, let's get tested or let's figure it out, right? I made it through grade school like the best I could. Um, the community knew my whole family because my siblings and I went through the same school. So I always say, like, I got pity grades. But then when I got into college, I studied marketing and management and I loved it. So it clicked for my creative brain and I was able to just, I mean, click in. I was really good at it and I did well at school for the first time. And I was like, what? I'm doing well? I could not believe it. But again, it's right. But then when we were in college, I had to teach myself how to study. Like I had all the colored pens, I would get flashcards and try know that like if I had to memorize like lots of material, I was going to write in different colors because if I wrote in different colors, number one, it'd help me memorize it and keep me interested.
Hmm.
And so literally I learned little skills like that along the way to help me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Where did alcohol come into your life? Like, about what age did you start drinking?
Yeah, it was 15 or 16. I was young. But it was part of our environment, part of the culture. It was what we did on the weekends.
Hmm.
It wasn't uncommon. So, and that was another area. You know what? I fit in. Like, we all spoke the same language. We all wanted to just have fun. It was all about having fun. And I think you and I can relate with that in college. We just
Hmm.
wanted to have fun. And so that's when it started. It did not rear its ugly head till way later. Um, but I always had a big tolerance for somebody my size.
Yeah.
Um, right. And I think that's one of the, oh, interestingly, now you look at that and go, hmm, but I never thought anything of it.
Hmm. Maybe that was a red flag that you just pretend you didn't see.
Absolutely. I think so. I think a lot of people would, right? It's like,
Hmm.
oh, well, you just drink like a fish, or oh, our families are drinkers, or whatever it may be. Um, so it was always normalized. It was normalized.
Did you ever have any incidents in high school where you were drinking and you got in trouble or anything with your parents finding out, anything like that?
No, not really. My parents, they may have known. I mean, sometimes I'm like, how did they not?
Hmm.
Um, but no, they never claimed to know. So I think I'm sure they had to have known.
Yeah.
But
Did you
they
have
just turned the
any,
other way.
right? Did you have any consequences at all from your drinking in high school?
In high school, I did not. No,
Yeah.
I mean, in high school, I partied hard, played hard, did school. I was pretty responsible for whatever 17, 18 year old.
Yeah.
Um, I got everything that I checked all the boxes.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then there was no problem.
You had that perfectionist theme.
Uh-huh.
We know
Yeah.
that all too well. So,
Right?
yeah.
I didn't even think I was one for the longest time.
Well, and then too, also like you're striving to be perfect, but then that's where the binge drinking comes in handy because then you're like, God, I'm tired of being perfect and being all of this for everyone. Like, let's just be reckless sometimes. Let's just like be
Yeah.
wild, so they can go hand in
Yeah.
hand.
They can go hand in hand. And I think, my best friend pointed out, she's like, well, this makes a lot of sense because if you think about it, like when I would drink, there would be one goal in mind, which was to have fun. And again, it would quiet down my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you can stop your brain from like going from like 20 thoughts to like two or three
Mm.
and be carefree, that is like doing a day of meditation, when you're
Mm-hmm.
young. Like, and I didn't even realize that, but hindsight, when she was like, I bet you really liked it because it just kind of let you like be at ease. And I was like, I never even thought of that because I
Yeah.
thought more of like the loud, fun, carefree, but I'm sure there was a sense of like peace that came from it too, or calmness
Yeah,
internally.
absolutely. That's so interesting. I mean, I think for some people it does have that depressant effect and makes you feel calm. And like you said, all you had so many thoughts and it kind of narrowed those down or quieted. For me, it was so different. It was like it made me I'm already hyper. It made me even more hyper. Like
Hmm.
it had such a different effect on me. It's so funny how, a substance can have different effects on people and then how
Yeah.
those effects can affect you later on. But that's really interesting. It does make sense though with the ADHD that it would calm those thoughts.
See it, and that's it. And I didn't realize that until after because I thought also, I'm like, well, it just made me more hyper. And I'd stay up and I'd like, I mean, you remember, I was like, we'd stay up forever, but I'd also be like the first person awake because I couldn't sleep in either.
Right. Right.
Um, but I think just like internally, like my brain fires very quickly. And a lot of people that knew me like in adulthood, they were like, you have ADHD, you look so calm.
Hmm.
And I think that's it. I think it's like externally I could look calm, right? Or like when we were out and we used to drink and stuff, it'd be like loud and fun and all of that. But the thoughts inside would like quiet down more so, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. So then you went to college and share a little bit about your relationship with alcohol and different, struggles that you had in college.
Yeah. So in college, oh my goodness. Um, I mean, I quickly found people that partied like I did. I mean, we all fit in. And to be honest, like, I've connected with a few college friends since then, and everybody really was just trying to do no harm and have a really good time again. And we all found similarities in that, I think. Even our friend circle, like we literally were like, okay, let's get our work done. And then how can we have the most fun in our lives?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was that time. And that's the best way I can think of it. If someone were to say, would you relive your college life experience? I say, yes, I would.
Yeah.
I really would. I think that, yes, alcohol played an ugly role at times, made decisions we weren't proud of, did things we wouldn't do, were reckless. Absolutely. Right. But I didn't have that internal turmoil with it yet.
Right. Yeah. So when did that switch? Like when did the inner turmoil come into play?
Yeah, so it was post college. I was living out on the West Coast. I checked the boxes, graduated college, got a marketing job. I was doing all the things, but I was out there and I was like, oh yeah, I'll make friends. It was hard as a young adult trying to make friends in like a brand new part of, the country. Um, And then it started with like, oh, I'll just like have wine while I'm cooking. And like, but then it became habitual, right? And to the point of like, yeah, I did make friends there and I did hang out. But then I kept making choices that were not very aligned with who I was at all. I mean, it was just ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, many people couldn't tell because this was high functioning but I could tell. And I had that moment. I had one night where I just had too much. And I remember waking up and being like, whew, like enough is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, and I knew I'd always had a really big, like deep spiritual connection with God, always. Always prayed, just one of those things. I watched my mom pray a lot growing up. She didn't push it too much on us, but I watched her consistency and all the stuff she got through and was able to get through. And I think that created my connection and my practice. And I was like, okay, so I was really connected to God, even though I was only 24. And I said, okay, this is not it. If I was going to lead the life that I knew that was meant for me, it was going to be a life without alcohol
Mm-hmm.
because alcohol had taken the driver's seat in my life.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. Do you think that you had what's called a spontaneous sobriety moment, or did you plan on that being the last time you would ever drink?
No, it was spontaneous. That was not
Spontaneous.
like it wasn't like a plan's like, okay, here I'm gonna, right? And even
Yeah.
after that, I probably drank for another few weeks. Like it wasn't just like okay, but I knew
Mm-hmm.
like I can't do this.
Yeah.
Or if I want to lead the life I'm meant to. I mean, I could have done it and continue to go down that path, but I just really felt like there was more to life. I didn't know what exactly it was yet though.
But you knew you were meant for more.
Yeah, I was meant for this.
Exactly.
Oh my
Exactly.
God. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's awesome that you had that vision. I think it's probably a three part, physical, mental, and spiritual, a coming together of all three, and that transcendence, it's a subconscious shift as well. They say you live 95% of your life through subconscious anyway. And I
Yeah.
think, yours probably had been boiling, like, or starting to boil. And then that day you woke up was the boiling point for you. And a
Abs-
switch was flipped for you.
yeah. It was 100% flipped.
I'd
Or
love
it
to
was like,
hear I'd love to hear about your early sobriety days. So you said you had that morning you woke up and you were like, I just can't live like this anymore. Had a few more drinks here and there. And then what did you do to finally stay sober?
so for me, I got support from my family. I kind of told them what was going on, and they were like, "What?" I like, I just totally, they had no idea. But they were like, "Okay, well, if this is real, and you're not just like messing around, let's get you support." So I got into therapy. I got into 12 step, and I will tell you, I was that person when we talk about like when we want something, we go all in, right? I think it's the athlete in us, the perfectionism. I wanted to get sobriety perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
like perfectly. So I did whatever the old timers would say to do.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hang out with the young people in sobriety. I hung out with the older people who had what I wanted, who were 15 years older than me, leading the life I wanted. Because if I were to listen, sit and be a student, then I would have that life one day.
That was very wise of you at the ripe age of what, 24?
I'm an old soul. I'm Grandma Nisha.
You're definitely an old soul. But that is so you went gangbusters on sobriety.
I really did. I mean, I literally did.
That's so Nisha.
It's so neat. That's what I'm saying. Like it's totally me. Like I went
Mhm.
all in
Yeah.
because I did not want to feel how I felt before. A lot of people will be like, "Wow, you were like what they call one chip wonder in the rooms, right?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Yeah." And I said because once I was like removed with the like body part, right, and the mind part, spiritually I was already removed
Hmm.
from alcohol. But when the other two went away, it no longer fit in the life I was leading, even though I was really early in sobriety and I was stumbling and everything felt awkward, socializing, going out. Like I still did those things. It just felt weird.
Hmm. It's almost like you have to build your sober muscle, you know? It's not, I think it's funny. I think when, like, I know for me, when I got sober, I thought I was going to have it all figured out by day 7. You know, I was
Yeah,
going to be a modern day prophet and look like a model and my face was
me
going to be
too.
clear. You know, I thought, gosh, it's just all going to happen so fast, but that is not the case. It takes structure, discipline, and patience to get through it. But it's
Mhm.
consistency. It's consistently showing up to your own life and not drinking, you know?
It is. And I think you said something right there. It takes structure, right? People forget that. It takes, I think, structure and discipline, but just the same amount of effort you put into whether it's drinking, drugging, binging, whatever your thing is, put double the amount into your recovery
Mm-hmm.
and your healing.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
really is. It's like, how they say for one, what, negative, we say five positives.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it that way, right? And so a lot of people stumble when they don't plan to stay sober. When, again, early on, you don't think, oh, I'm going to go out. Should I? How am I going to get a drink? What am I going to drink? Am I going to tell somebody? Pre plan these things.
Mm-hmm.
Know what you're going to do because if you know what you're going to do, you have a plan, you're confident, you're less likely to go in a different direction.
That is such good advice. Yes, like plan your mocktail that you're going to have. If you want to make an excuse like I'm fasting or this is for Lent or I am trying to fit into my summer dress,
Yeah.
whatever. If you have to say those things, that's fine, but have a plan. That is so instrumental in early sobriety. I could not agree with you more.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think, in the consistency, be consistent.
Hmm.
Whatever you're choosing as your different modes of healing or working on yourself, do it daily.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really cool how you started with AA, and AA is amazing. It's readily available. You can go anywhere in the world and go to a meeting. It's free. They're very structured and consistent. It's definitely a topic of debate in a lot of recovery groups, if
Yeah.
you've ever been around them. But, I'd love to hear your experience with the 12 steps. Did you go through the 12 steps? Did you ask for a sponsor? How did that go?
Yeah. So I did. I went fully through the 12 steps. I had one of like the oldest people in the rooms that I went to, the meeting I went to, lead me through, of course. And I remember people being like, "Why'd you pick her?" And I was like, "She's hard." And I was like, "Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
She's the toughest." Um, and really, again, there are so many different opinions, but I was at the point, well, number one, when I did get sober, there wasn't so many different options. Like we weren't picking from a menu.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in such a place that honestly, you could have told me to go do a headstand for 5 minutes and that was gonna like keep me clean and I would have done it.
Right. You were like, just tell me
Right?
what
Like,
to do.
tell me what to do. I literally just like when I go to the gym, I tell my trainer, tell me what to do. I want to take the thinking out of it.
Right.
Right? But I was in so much pain, I didn't know what to do because
Mm-hmm.
everything I thought I should do, I tried and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Or that like society told me, or my environment told me, or my upbringing told me. I went through all that stuff. It didn't work, but these people had something that supposedly worked. So I was going to do it to test it.
It's
And
interesting what you're talking about. It's like you decided to listen. You decided to stop doing it on your own and just sit back and listen. And that's what
Hmm.
changed for you.
Yeah.
I
It's
love
the
that.
surrender. I know people hate that word and they're like, oh, but that's, being weak. I mean, it's what you make of it
Mm-hmm.
though, because I think every time you give into that behavior, you're surrendering to that behavior. So
Exactly.
you're choosing what you're surrendering to, either a solution or a problem. A word is a word, right? If you're in that much pain, I don't think it should matter.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your opinion on the word alcoholic. Do you identify as one? Do you use another word? Like I know a lot of people debate that issue. Should we say we're alcoholic? It's a very personal decision to people. Tell me your opinion on that.
That's such a great question. Again, it's a word to me, and I think people overcomplicate it to take away from the actual thing that is the problem.
Right.
So whether you want to say alcoholic or you don't, that's your call. I don't.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't have an opinion on whether people do or don't,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is your solution? Like, I know that probably sounds very hardcore and like, what?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's so many scapegoats to getting healthy that we're almost nitpicking a little too much.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think we put too much emphasis on something so small and trivial like a word like that. I think for some people, it's very empowering to them, maybe because they're finally acknowledging it to themselves that they're an alcoholic, and that's why it's
Yeah.
powerful to them. For me, I struggled so much with that word. I would refuse to say it. I would
Yeah.
say, my name is Megan. Move on. I think, and
I love
now,
it.
now I'll say I'm a person in recovery. And I think
Yes.
for me, it's because it's not present tense anymore. So I don't want to use that word like a scarlet letter, but I have no problem with anyone else using that word, identifying with that word. If it gives you power, then hell yeah, use it, wear it, however you want to use it is totally fine with me.
Yeah, I agree. What you're saying, 100%. If it works for you, great. If it gives you identity, if it gives you community, go for it. But just like my clients, like in private practice, who sometimes are like, well, what do I have? What's my diagnosis? Like
Mm-hmm.
they want that, or they'll go be like, I went on TikTok and I think now I have bipolar. And I'm like, what
Right,
makes you think that? And why do we need to label it?
right.
And it's right. And I always wonder, why do you, what's so important about the labeling?
Yeah,
What is it? And it's not that it's a bad thing at
yeah.
all. Sometimes people I like to know why,
Mm-hmm.
because I think if I know the why, then I have a solution, right? Or I can find the path to whatever. Um, so yeah, I think to each their own.
Yeah. So I think a lot of, alcohol use disorder, alcoholism, it drinking isn't necessarily the problem, it's the ineffective solution, right? So what do you think, like what was your why? Like what do you think was the reason you had a relationship with alcohol that eventually turned into a negative, relationship?
Yeah, I think my relationship with alcohol, why my original why was because it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like that lighthearted. It was something to do. I connected with my peers. It was escape from life, but in a fun way, not like I'm numbing from life.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it started.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and you know what, I actually wrote about it today. It was drinking when we get together with friends and stuff, especially depending on what life stage you're in, and actually in all life stages nowadays, it's not just a behavior, it's a ritual we all do
Mm-hmm.
to connect, to celebrate. And that's what it was.
Right.
Every weekend, we did this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was very ritual.
Did you find that once, alcohol had gotten to a certain level in your life that it wasn't easy to make connections anymore? Or the other two part to that question would be now that you're sober, did you notice that connections you made when you were drinking were actually not that strong to begin with?
Some of them, yes, and some of them, no. I think some of the character defects which that's what we call them, right? That I had while I was drinking, some of the people pleasing and all that, that still was there after I got sober, right? So I don't think they just go away because you stop drinking. I don't. Now, the choice in people probably have changed, absolutely. But a lot of the friendships I made, even though maybe we did drink together or we had so much fun together. I mean, look at our college friends. Look at the reunion we just had,
Mm-hmm.
there really was soul level deep connections that we all had, that we would all get together again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
And I
agree with
wouldn't
that.
change that.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't second guess those relationships.
Right. So you did AA for how long? How long did you join that community for? Are you still in the community?
I will say I'm not actively in the community. Um, it was it was a while. It was until I literally life got busy and I moved.
Mm-hmm.
I had children, all of that stuff. Probably 10, no, about 6 years, maybe
Okay. So a
6, 8
long
years.
time. It was a
But
big part.
it was a big part, but I was always connected. I've always been connected. I still have my friends from that community.
Wow.
Um, yeah, yeah, I do. And that's it, right? We make good friends. When you have those good, deep connections and friendships, they stay,
Mm-hmm.
right? I could go walk in there today and it would be like, oh, hey, I wouldn't recognize most of the people, but the three that I do, right? Um, but I had an old timer. I remember when I was younger, I was about to get married. I was about to move. And I lived in Alpharetta. I loved living in the suburbs. And I was moving closer to the city. And she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just getting nervous. Like, what if I can't get here every week? And she's like, you probably won't. And I was like, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, find places closer to you. I was like, okay. And it made me nervous because I had a consistent, regimen that I did for so
Mm-hmm.
many years.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, listen, as long as you stay in the middle, which is you pray, you do your 12 step, which is giving back, you stay plugged in the community in some form, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You got sober to go live life.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get sober just to stay here and like do this all the time,
That is so good. That is so,
right?
so true. Yeah.
You
And
got
you
sober to live.
you applied that structure, discipline, patience, just you had to make a new ritual,
Hmm.
to where you were living. So I'd
Yeah.
I'd love to know, that first year, first 6 months, did you have cravings or did those completely go away?
Those went away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always say, I'm like, gosh, I'm not, sometimes I'm like, I wish I was more relatable and I did, but those went away. But I think, and I give it actually all the credit to my spiritual connection. The spiritual foundation I had um, just, I think, really did remove that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that things that alcohol numbed, right? Whatever I was dissatisfied with, the internal dialogue, the environments were healed through the community that I surrounded myself with after.
Mm-hmm.
I had women in my lives, in my circle, that like mothered me and like loved me until I could love myself.
Yeah.
Really, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
A gift that I was given.
Yeah.
Um, hmm
That's so beautiful. I think that the relationships that we make in recovery, whether it's recovery from alcohol, drugs, whatever, eating disorders, those relationships are so different than your everyday relationships. And I think they are because we don't have the masks on. We don't have the masks on of like, I'm a nurse and I run marathons and I grew up in this city. Like, it's like, I'm going to tell you my deepest, darkest secret, and then you're going to love me through it. And that connection that you make in those communities the bond is so strong, so strong.
So, and that took me a while. That took me a while. I remember when they would be like, "We cannot wait till the day we see you ugly cry,"
Mm-hmm.
because I wore the mask even after
Yeah.
for many years. They're like, "We cannot wait till you take it off," and they were saying it in a loving way, of like, "You're so beautiful without it. Just walk."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that was you
it's hard.
probably fighting that perfectionism, even in sobriety, like
Oh yeah,
keeping your cards close to the table of, okay, don't let them see the worst of it. But they wanted to, and they wanted to love you through it.
yeah, because they've been there, done that, and they
Mm-hmm.
know that like when you can, like you said, be authentic and show that to at least a few, right? Again, it works towards your recovery, not against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know that I've heard you talk a lot about grace and giving yourself grace, and I love your opinion on that. And I think, like what we're doing now, like sharing the story and shredding the shame, like all of the bad stuff that we went through, like it serves a purpose now rather than serving shame. And I'd love to hear your opinion on shame and your opinion on grace, giving yourself grace.
Yeah, the shame is that's a hard one. I think that takes a lot of practice. Um, you know, there's many different ways of shedding it. Does it ever go away? No, totally. No. I think it's more of a managing it, right? Turning it into a whisper, but giving that grace a louder volume,
I like that.
right? So giving grace for me really, that came into play. I'm still pretty hard on myself. I'll be honest. I am really hard on myself. Um, but I think I've learned over the past few years that I've got to give myself more grace. Um, I think that the just everything I've been through in life, I read this somewhere, I heard this somewhere. It's like women are built like because they can go through so much and endure so much that like even as life gets busy and stuff, we're used to doing that. That I did that so much that I totally had fully like burnt out 2.5 years ago. And I mean, literally, I was like, but I looked like I had it going on, you know? And I was like, what is wrong with me? And that's when I was like, okay, I've got to go figure this out because something's off.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a really good book about burnout called Burnout. And, the whole premise is like stress isn't necessarily bad for you. Being stuck in the stress is bad for you. There's an upside to some stress. But yeah, I mean, I think learning to deal with stress also in a healthy way is like one of the biggest indicators that someone will remain sober because change and stress is always going to come at us, no matter what age we are. And like being able to have healthy coping skills to adapt to that without burning out, that'll keep you sober right there.
right. And I think the tricky part is that, right, like, I don't know if you're this, I think you're the same way, I can't remember, but, you know, when I'm stressed or when I feel like that, I go into hyperproductivity. So again, I feel like, oh, well, I'm doing it all. I'm doing great, right? Really not losing that connection with my inner intuition. And I rebuilt that. And when I rebuilt that, it was like, oh, wow, I found myself again. I remember when I was working with a coach and she was like, when were you like your happiest? And I looked back and I was like 20, 24, 25. She's like, what'd you do? And that was my first year of recovery. So that wasn't even like the prettiest part of my life. But she's like, what about it? And I was like, well, I was like connected with myself. I was like hanging out with the coolest people. I worked out. I had a good job. Like, and she's like, you just light up when you talk about it. How do we bring that into now? How do you bring that Nisha back? Even though you're a mom and you're a wife and like, what, how do you connect with that self? And that's what I did. And I had to do it through giving myself grace of sometimes saying no, because I want to say yes to everything. I want to people please everybody. I think that's where grace comes in.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point about self-love. I think for some people, like when I've worked with people who come to my clinic and they are struggling with alcohol use or any type of addiction, self-love is sometimes really hard. So we actually work on self-acceptance. So just accepting where you are and giving yourself grace for that time in your life. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting though that I want to go back to what you said about the hyperproductivity because I definitely have that. I suffer from that. I like to keep myself so busy that I don't think about the bad things. And, some might call that harm reduction because I am 6 years sober and I am very healthy, but I do struggle with just staying busy all the time so that I don't deal with the bad things in my life.
I know. And we all, I think eventually we all get to that point where we slow down. And I think you are in that busy, fun phase of recovery. I will say that. I think there's something between like 6 and 10 where you're just like sprinting through life, but it's fun. It's invigorating. Like it's almost like you got your second chance. So you're going to make the most of it.
Yeah, I
Don't
do.
judge it
Yeah.
and run with it. Right. Like
Yeah.
you're like, you're saying that. I'm like, yeah, it's like you got your second chance. And then you get to like the other end of it, like kind of where I am. And it's like, then you settle and you get quiet because then it's almost like, oh, I did the gritty, I did the running. And then the silence and the quiet and the stillness isn't so scary. Even if there's negative stuff and healing to be done, you almost want to dig in it,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
I'll never forget. I know I've told you this before, but me and you went on a bachelor trip. I think it was our friend Maggie, and you were newly sober. And I was very much not sober. And I remember we were like in Florida partying it up. and you just looked amazing, and you had this like energy around you of just like love and light. But I remember I woke up one morning hungover from the girls trip, and I went outside, and you were on the balcony, and it was like 6 or 7 in the morning, and you were meditating. And here I am 24, and I'm like, what is she doing out there? And I was in awe of you. I was like, that is what I want. What am I doing
Oh,
hungover? Here you are just like living such a beautiful life. And I didn't get sober for a long time after that, but that vision of you meditating on the porch of a bachelorette party in the middle of chaos was so inspiring and beautiful. So I wanted to bring that up because I know you are really spiritual, and your relationship with meditation is a big part of your
mhm.
practice. I'd love to hear a
Yeah.
little bit more about that.
Well, first, thanks for making me cry.
Sorry,
I
I have
remember
that.
that.
I have that effect on people.
I know. It's so funny. You remember that from the trip. You know what I remember? And this is it, everybody trying to pay our cab driver money. And so I was like, everybody give me your money. Like, I mean, I think everybody was like, the man would have made like $500 that night. But I was like, no, no, no. I'm the accountant of this group of girls.
Yeah.
And like, it was quite comical. So that's
Well,
what I remember. He's like, yeah, give Nisha the money. She's
yeah.
got it. I was like, yeah, I got it. Give me the money,
It's
please.
so funny because I think about you. We were wild, and you were like our little mom. But like I remember, you had so much fun. It really
Yeah.
was such a good thing for me to see because you were dancing and you were socializing and you were sober. Like that seeing that at 24. I mean, I'm just so glad that I had that vision. I think about that a
Mm.
lot. I think that was a big part of my recovery, even though it didn't happen till much later. But seeing what that sobriety could be fun, and it didn't have to be this like boring thing where you're in a church basement all the time. It was
I,
like you're
yeah.
literally living life to the fullest, sober with your Shirley Temple,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But yeah,
That means a lot.
I
Thanks.
want to hear more about your meditation and like what's your practice with that? Do you meditate every day? Do you meditate in the morning, night?
So it's evolved over the years. When I first got sober, I could not sit still for 2 minutes if you paid me. I mean, I was that person that shook their leg like super fast and just like lots of just that energy. And I remember someone going, try 2 minutes of just listening to like nature sounds. That's literally where I started.
Mm-hmm.
It was not silent meditation. I was listening to something and that helped me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to reading meditations, those daily reflections. And then I would read that and then I'd sit quietly and I'd write on that. And that was my form of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I would listen to CDs and like guided meditations. So I kind of advanced the different ways, also the time. Through that, I was able to sit longer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right? Um, and it's changed like throughout the years. I've played around with it. Sometimes I do walking meditations,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're seated. Right now, um, every day I do seated meditations. So for me, it's quiet. I do have some type of sound in the background. It just really helps me get just settled and in tuned. And my favorite thing to do is quiet down enough to where I can hear my heartbeat and then I feel it through my body.
Mm-hmm.
If you can feel your heartbeat, you're like, you're there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you could hold on to it for 30 seconds if you can. Um, and that's what I do. And I have thoughts come in, you guys, I'm human,
Mm-hmm.
but I just let them go.
Yeah.
I try to let them go and go back into my heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I love that. I was at this recovery retreat in Montana a few years ago, and there was like they brought in this like spiritual guru, and she said something that has always stuck with me. She was like, "You are the sky. You are the entire sky. Your thoughts, they're the weather. They're just gonna roll in those scary thoughts, and they're gonna roll out. But you, honey, are the sky." And I'm like, "I'm the sky."
God, I love that. I love it.
Yes.
And my
Yeah.
movers, I'll go through phases where I can't sit. So meditation, also walking like nature's like one of my favorite
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah.
So I literally, if I can't go for a walk, I'll go stand outside.
Mm-hmm.
It only takes 2 minutes. Like to change your brain, I think you have to get 12 to 15 minutes. But you know what? You can string them together throughout the day. It doesn't have to be all together.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's like, well, I have to build up to that. I was like, not technically. You could do
Hmm.
2 minutes,
Hmm.
like 6 times a day, and your brain will start changing.
That neuroplasticity. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think last year for my 40th, I went to Miraval and I sat through 25 minutes, did not move a muscle. And afterwards, I was like, who am I? I
Hmm.
cannot believe I could sit that long and
Yeah.
sit still.
Yeah. I've been
'Cause-
reading a lot about applied suffering. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but basically meditation is a form of that. And it's a way to kind of elicit that dopamine hit in a reverse way, right? So like scrolling, eating sugary foods, alcohol, it gives you that big, rise in dopamine into
Mhm.
that pleasure. And then you fall into pain, right? But if you dip a little bit into pain, you're going to upswing into pleasure, right? There's a whole scientific study on this. And yeah, meditation is a form of applied suffering, of putting yourself through some pain, because I don't know about you, but sometimes my thoughts are scary. And you have to sit with them. You've got to learn to sit with them. You've got to, quiet the mind. I mean, we have circumstantial evidence that the future and the past exist, but all we really know is the present moment. And that's what meditation does. It forces you to live in the present moment.
Yeah, it really does. Or you know what? You can sit there and live in the past or the future, right? But the goal with the meditation is bring yourself back in.
Mm,
Bring yourself back in. Because if we think there's so many different forms of meditation, like in the guided ones, it can take you through all sorts of areas of life if you want to go there,
yeah,
right? But if you want to get present into the moment, yeah, for sure.
I love that. Do you journal as well?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I like writing. Writing is very cathartic for me. Um, so I probably write like 4 to 5 times a week. And I mean, they can even be short,
Mm-hmm.
like little short 3 or 4 sentences.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's a way of also reconnecting with myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? How I said I had gotten so disconnected,
Mm-hmm.
and I had lost my spark, and that's part of keeping my spark is staying aligned. And I know when I write, sometimes thoughts that I am not thinking will come out on the paper.
Yeah. I've seen some people do journaling with prompts. I like to do that. But I've also seen, I have a friend that he journals by just waking up and then writing out a stream of consciousness. It doesn't even have to make sense. It's just a bunch of
Hmm.
gibberish, but occasionally some like really awesome sentences will come out. And I think that's so interesting, like that energy release of just your consciousness on the paper.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think, especially after you waking up,
Mm-hmm.
I pretty sure he finds some really good gems in there. One of the things I like to do is I do pull oracle cards, which you know that,
Yes.
and I read. And so I will pull cards, and then with whatever I pull, I'll journal on that.
Yeah, that's a cool way to do it too. I like that.
Hmm.
I love, love, love your spirituality and your connection to nature. I just find it so beautiful. I think for me and my spiritual journey, on my sober day, I had a spiritual awakening experience. And, I had to really develop that spiritual relationship over many, many years. It did not come overnight to me, but I will say that now my spirituality is my foundation for everything that I do. And that's not going to track with everyone, but I just think it's important to know that your spirituality doesn't necessarily come overnight. It's something that you have to work on as well.
I agree. And also it evolves.
Mm-hmm.
Like where I started, right? Like I grew up in a Hindu home and I like would practice the way my mom practiced. And then I developed my own relationship with God early in recovery and I defined how I thought, God was. And then as I kept going, it kept evolving and evolving and evolving, into where now I say it's more spiritual than religious for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there are just different belief systems that I have that I incorporate that fit for me,
Right.
right? Unique to what I feel connected to and aligned with. It's not for everybody, but I will say it's when you find whatever works for you, and that can change too. It can be scary,
Mm-hmm.
right? But just something that's greater than you,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more powerful.
Yeah. We were in Mexico in December on a work trip, and I had a very spiritual experience. I was meditating on the beach, and it was really windy. And I like to do guided meditations with like
Hmm.
sound, and
Yes.
sometimes they'll like say some prompts. So sitting there on the beach in Mexico, the waves are crashing in, the wind is blowing, and I just had this moment of like being rooted on my feet, rooted to the sand. Like everything was chaotic around me, but I was so rooted in
Mm.
my being. And that experience was so amazing to me. I've had some really transformative, meditative, spiritual experiences. So definitely recommend trying that if you're newly sober, or, if you're trying, if you're dealing with something mental health wise, even just 5 minutes a day, do a block of meditation and do it consistently for 30 days and see how it changes your life.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be dead silent. I think a big intimidation factor I hear a lot of times is, well, what do I do?
Right.
I can't just sit there and quiet. You don't have to. Like you said, guided meditations are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Start there. They'll tell you what to do. You just show up and you sit down
Mm-hmm.
or stand if you want to.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't make it too long. Just start where you are.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit before we close on two things.
Yeah.
The work that you're doing now, and your fitness journey, because you have been on such an amazing fitness journey. I have watched you transform your body. You were always in good shape. Now you're like in impeccable, literally fitness influencer shape. And,
Oh, well, thank
and
you.
we are both 40 now. I can't believe we're
Yeah.
that old, but it's not actually old. 40 is actually very young. But, to have this amazing figure and be an amazing athlete at age 40 like you are, I'd love to hear more about that journey for you.
So this is where that like, oh my gosh, almost like imposter syndrome, but not really. Like I want to be like behind closed doors, like you don't see me. Like, no, I'm not.
Yes.
But I'm gonna say thank you,
Yes.
number one, because it's uncomfortable to own it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, it feels good. I will say that. I am so grateful that I get to spend the time and spend the energy on it that I get to. And I will say that this is part of this, as cheesy as it sounds, it's like slowly but surely, like when I got sober, I did not know that I was going to be a therapist. But quickly, after getting into therapy and being told by several therapists, you should sit in our seat.
Mm-hmm.
It felt right. I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then therapy, it continued to lead to fitness. And then I did a fitness program several years back. Again, I didn't realize, I started quietly. I didn't share my journey. And then I remember it was like 4 months out from this like shoot I was going to do at the end of a shred. And I told my trainer, I was like, okay, you can post it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you're going to change lives. I didn't believe him.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you that I didn't realize how big of an impact I would have. And I'm not tooting my horn. Really, I say this humbly, but I didn't realize the impact I would have until I shared that. And I had women my age, my community, any community coming to me and be like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Like, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to get holistically healthy.
Mm-hmm. You know what you did there by sharing that? You put yourself in the arena to bring it
I
back
did.
to the quote.
I really did. And that one was like,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know anybody's like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That was, that was probably the stepping stone to sharing the recovery,
Mm.
right? Because through that, I gained the confidence to go, oh my gosh, I am a change maker and I
Mm-hmm.
am meant to be in a larger platform
Yeah.
because people are listening and they hear me and they can relate to me. And I don't mind showing them the days that I don't hit my PRs.
Mm-hmm.
I'll post those sometimes. You know
Mm-hmm.
why? Because every day we're not going to do well,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to make sure that people see that I struggle too.
Yeah. You show them
Um,
the good and the bad.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and this is going on a little bit of a tangent, but early sobriety is so glamorized.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing fucking
No.
glamorous about early sobriety.
No.
I'm sorry.
Mm-mm.
Right. And that was part of me sharing that, like coming out on that too, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like everybody's glamorizing it with mocktails and this and that. And I'm like, you feel like crap.
Yeah.
Like,
So
you
true.
don't, you don't know who you are. You're insecure. Your makeup doesn't look good anymore. Like,
Yeah.
What? You're
Yeah.
waking up.
I know. For me, I traded the alcohol for sugar. So I literally would walk around with peanut butter M&Ms like in my pocket and just eat them all day long. And so I gained like 50 pounds in sobriety, which
Yes.
stuck around for a while. But yeah, no, I mean, and then also early sobriety, you're having lots of thoughts that you cannot numb and you have to sit with them. And that you're right. It's not pretty. It's
It's
not
not
pretty.
pretty.
No,
It's not glamorous. There's nothing fab about it. So, I
no.
mean, great if you can do it fabulously, but I just didn't see it. But I feel that women are suffering in silence behind closed doors. And
Mm-hmm.
then they have these expectations
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, my early sobriety, my journey should look like this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think I love the fact that we're coming together to go, actually, no, it took a few years to look like we do or
Mm-hmm.
sound like we do. It didn't happen overnight at
No,
all.
it took structure, discipline, and patience.
Correct. And loving ourselves even when we're ugly. And then also working on ourselves
Mm-hmm.
inside and outside, both.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And I've always loved fitness. I've always been an athlete. And so to me, when I did this shred, it really was more in alignment with who I was originally.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped me come back into me,
Mm-hmm.
like the me I know, the me that I am. And then it led to just me being confident. And I've always loved lifting heavy weights with the ADHD. That makes sense, of
Mm-hmm.
course, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, yeah, last year, I think I just had this moment where I knew I wanted to be a sobriety coach, but I didn't really tell my story yet because I wanted to help those women that are suffering in silence. And then I was like, I remember part of self care and giving myself grace and not feeling ashamed is taking staycations.
Mm-hmm.
So I do staycations now.
I love that.
Um, yes, I mean, one night away from the
That's
family, I just take to myself.
good for you, girl. Good
It
for
is a
you.
game changer. I
Yes.
empower every woman out there to do it. It is, I swear, a game changer.
I
When
love that.
when my executive coaches told me to do that, I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, no, go do it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I remember I was texting with her and I was like, hey, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm ready to share. And she's like, okay. And that's kind of how it evolved.
Yeah, and you shared your
Uh,
before and your after, and I think ultimately what you give people is hope, and then you did it in the holistic way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with GLP-1s, weight loss shots, all of that. However, your story did not involve anything like that. It was just consistency of hard work.
it was consistency. It was consistency of hard work. And I will say, and guidance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there were experts leading me. There were coaches,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had a fitness coach. I consult with a nutritionist time to time because also as we age, change, get older, things change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, I like to, just as I would go to a cardiologist if I have a heart issue, ophthalmologist for eyes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same way about my mental health and my physical health,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I do that.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
love that.
that's helpful. And it keeps you accountable and it
Mm-hmm.
gives you structure. If you really want, a specific result, then yeah.
Yeah. Seek for some guidance. I love that. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. However, I would get in trouble because I think I'm
Yes.
only allowed so many hours on my platform. But what I want to do now is the lightning round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions and I want you to give me your best answer. Okay. Are you ready? I,
I'm so ready,
I
I
need
think.
some like do 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 music. All right.
I know.
So the first question is you are given 3 options and you have to pick one. Would you shark dive, bungee jump, or skydive?
Shark dive.
Ooh, that's a good answer. Yeah. I'm going scuba diving in 2 weeks for the first time and I'm so scared, but I like to be scared. So, okay, next question. Number 2. You're in a simulation. What music plays every time you walk into a room? The same song plays every time you walk in a room. What song is it?
Oh,
Uh,
seriously? Oh my God, Cinderella Man by
oh,
Eminem.
by Eminem. Okay. I love this.
Going back. Going
I
back.
love this for you.
If you
I,
hear the lyrics of it, you'd totally get it.
okay.
If
I love
you're
it.
not familiar, you'll be like, oh.
He said a lot of good things. Success is
He
the
talks
only
about
option.
recovery.
Okay. Cinderella
Well, and
Man.
that he
Okay.
talks about his recovery and how he's given a second chance and just like coming
I
back.
love that.
Hmm.
I enjoy him. I think he's a baddie.
Yes.
He's one of my
And he's a
recovery.
sober
He
brother.
is
Yeah,
a
I was gonna
sober brother. I look up to him very much. Okay, number 3. What is your favorite Disney movie?
say, ooh, that one's a hard one. My favorite Disney movie?
Uh-huh.
First one that came to mind was Moana.
Ooh, Such a good soundtrack. This Moana 2 didn't have as good of music, but Moana 1, like I could rock out to that one for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
All right, number 4. What is something you're obsessed with?
What am I obsessed with?
Mhm.
Can I say the gym?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
I'm like,
Absolutely.
well, we already know that about me. Do I need something new? I do have
Yeah.
new things that I'm.
And then the last one. What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom to me is my core value, actually.
Hmm.
It's one of my core values. So that's what it means to me.
Yeah.
It is the ability to do what I want, when I want, however I want.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean being reckless at all. I think that's what a lot of people associate it with. But freedom to choose, freedom to live and really be myself whenever and wherever I go.
Hmm.
That's freedom today.
Yeah, being authentic to you.
Hmm.
I love that. Well, let's tell people how they can find you. You are a therapist, and also you do coaching. You do recovery coaching, sober coaching. You do a lot of things. So, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can either find me on Instagram, Nisha Patel Coaching, or you can go to my website, theniche.com. And on there, you'll see my therapy services, my coaching services, as well as my speaking services. I do workshops and speaking engagements as well.
Awesome. I have loved this. This was our first episode, and it just meant so much to me that you would be my first guest. And thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It was such an honor. Thank you so much for having me as your first guest. I know this is going to be wonderful. And congratulations on the big 6.
6 years. All
Yes.
right. Love you, girl.
Love you too.